Hi everyone, good morning. So I'm super happy because I got a mic today and I can test it. So I hope I think the sound is much better now. So I'm going to present you my new painting. I just finished yesterday night, so I don't have any title yet, but it will come soon. And today I'm going to explain to you my process and the concept of this new painting I just finished. To start with, as usual, I'm taking photos from the news. So this time I wanted to talk about the confinement, of course, the physical entity, the digital entity within the time frame of a confinement through the perspective of a crisis. So what I've done is I took photos in the news, and as usual, normally when I do a painting, I use 3 different photos. So the first one is a representation of the tents which have been set up for the pandemic in Wuhan. And the second photo is a symbolic, it's really hard to see, but the big blue lines on the background are a representation of highways because it's linked to mobility and who has access to highways during a pandemic. And the third picture I took is coming from an arcade game room. And I wanted to talk about the confinement, the self-confinement of people within a gaming place. To start with the tents, they are a representation of the present. How in a certain crisis you manage people and how authorities are enforcing certain measures in a certain matter of time, and how those measures can be after that implemented on the long term or not. So it asks the question of extraordinary time. We enforce certain rules. Should we keep them for the sake of the society in maybe against the democratic norm, or should we stop them? It's also related to the relativism, because those tents, and you have people in it. You have an authority, the Chinese authority, who takes certain measures, and then you have the viewer, so it's the physical entity, and then as an observer, a world observer through the medias, you have a kind of perspective, your own perspective, but other this situation taken in another country. So it's really linked to the fact that you are a digital viewer and you need to always never to forget that you have a kind of relativism in terms of your culture compared to others. The middle, so the second part is in the middle, and it's more like on the background, and it represents highways. So those highways are linked to the physical mobility and linked to this pandemic. As we are all confined, certain countries allow people to take highways, others don't. So it's really linked to the fact that your physical mobility is constrained in a certain time, in a certain matter of territoriality, and who you are at the present time will allow you to be mobile or not. So also it's going to define in the future, because it's your physical entity, so you are not mobile, you are confined in a certain environment, so you need to stay in this environment, and as you stay, you need to communicate with the external world, so you become a kind of digital entity. So it's really linked, and I think it's because it's in the middle, it's in the line, it's really linked between the physical entity of the people of the tents with the people of the organizational of entities within a society, the physical part, to the digital part, which is the last part for me, which is a representation of an arcade games room. And it's really how your physical entity, so it's related to games, interact with a machine which is physical because it's arcade games. It's not VR, which is a different world. So how you interact and then you become virtual. So it's really like a full circle. So you have a situation. It's a temporality of the situation. It's a certain time. The society organizes itself, and you have photos of inside the tents, the beds, and I took photos also here from Spain, from different parts of the world. And then you have this link with the mobility, with the physical mobility of the highways, because all roads are the main component of societal organization. And then you have a link to the game and the digital entity. And also it's related to the theory of game, which you can Google. It's something which is a bit different. It's how in a circumstance of a game you establish virtual rules. So it's really like the question of who we are, physically speaking, who we are virtually speaking, who we might become, and with on the background the notion of organization, of rules from the game, because it's virtual. So I hope that it has been interesting. It's if you have any question, just ask, write them down, and see you next week for another painting. Bye bye.